Welcome to Crafty Beach. I have an apple themed tier tray for you today. But first, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, the bell if you'd like to be notified, and a thumbs up is always appreciated. Okay, for fall, I thought apples would be great for my tier tray in my kitchen. And check out this amazing thrift find I found. It is an apple cider press, and it's made out of cast iron. Now, I got this at the thrift store for $2.99, and it was chipped up a little bit because it's really old. It was stamped on the back with 1978. So hopefully I am not destroying a priceless antique. Probably not. But I wanted it to be nice and bright and clean for my kitchen. It had a lot of rust on it. So I am just trying to touch up the paint. I went over the wood handle and the wood bottom there that were both chipped with ivory as well as that little cider bottle. And I'm going to try to repaint those. And then I'm just going over all of the black parts of the cast iron with my black paint pen and giving that a fresh coat of paint. The paint was a little off originally on this. And I just wanted it to look brighter, and I'm trying to cover up a lot of the rust. I want it to look nice and clean because it's going to be on my kitchen counter. I am doing my 2-tier tray today. So now I'm going over that ivory chalk paint with my Antique Wax by Waverly and trying to simulate that wood grain. The cast iron on this was stamped, so it made it easier. Now, you'll find today I had a lot of problems finding supplies for my apple tier tray at the Dollar Tree, so I had to think outside the box. Apples are something that people have decorated with for a very long time, so super easy to find at the thrift store or a garage sale, so keep that in mind. I also use Target Dollar Spot and Dollar General. So I got the browns looking pretty good, so I am just going to use some of this crimson chalk paint and a little tiny brush and go in there and start to brighten up those little apples. And I haven't done an apple tier tray before, but it was really fun. I had a lot of fun putting this together. This is a cast iron piece with a little tiny circle hanger on the back. You can't really stand it up straight because it's kind of at an angle there. And so I actually have to attach this to my tier tray with a zip tie. And I'm just going in there with my green paint pen and giving a fresh coat of paint to all of the little leaves on there. I tried originally to glue this to a wood block, but cast iron does not hot glue. I learned that. And this is just chalk paint in the color hazelnut to brighten up all the wood on there because it was a little dark. But I like the little cider bottle being dark. So I think that's gonna work. Okay, next project. I found this cute little jar at the Dollar Tree and these little wooden apples. I picked up 2 packages of them. They have these in mushrooms and in... What was the one that I just used the other day? I'm completely blanking out. But they have them, acorns. And they're so cute. They have these little wood stems on there. Some of them are longer than others, but you can kind of use those to hang on to when you try to paint them. But you have to use a little tiny brush for sure. And I am just using that chalk paint by Waverly in the color of crimson. And I'm going to go ahead and make all of my little wooden apples bright red. Now my plan here was to put the little apples in that cute little buffalo check plastic jar. Once I get them in there though, I'm thinking that doesn't really make sense to have apples in a jar. So I do end up doing something else with them. So I'm just going around and painting them all. I'm kind of not really worrying if I mess up the paint because it's kind of sticking to that raw wood really easily, the chalk paint. So one coat is definitely good. Once I get them all painted this beautiful color of red, I'm going to go in with my brown paint pen and just trying to brown up the stem a little bit. It was kind of difficult because some of the stems were really short, and so I did end up getting brown paint on the top of my apples. But no big deal. I do go in and try to touch them up a little bit, but I'm probably being extra. And you can still kind of see it through, but that's okay. Apples are supposed to not look perfect, right? They're supposed to have some spots on there. So I'm using my heat gun to dry those guys, and this is where I put them in that little plastic jar. And then I decide, yeah, that doesn't really make sense. It's kind of cute, but I think I can do one better. So I go and get one of these little crates from the Dollar Tree. I always pick these up when I see them because they can be used for so many things. This is the one with the little openings in the sides. It's a great crate for food. So I'm just using my antique wax by Waverly and going over and doing a quick stain on all of the surfaces of the crate. I want it to be a complete project, so I'm going to go ahead and do the inside and the bottom as well. That way, if I go to reuse this and the bottom is visible, it's going to look super professional. So, Antique Wax by Waverly, if you haven't used it, it's so easy. You just slap that on there, then go in there and follow it up with a paper towel and wipe off the excess. And especially on this raw wood from the Dollar Tree, super simple. So I have all of the outside, the bottom, and the inside all with Antique Wax by Waverly. And then I'm going to go in and even touch up the little pieces of wood that are like connecting it. I just didn't want any of the raw wood showing through. And on the inside of the slats, I want it to look really good. Now I thought this would be a perfect little crate for the apples, but it needed something, so I'm going to use one of these little Farm Fresh wooden cutouts, the fall cutouts from the Dollar Tree, and just do a quick coat of ivory on there, and just using a little skewer to get any little loose strips out of there. I don't want that to be seen, and giving it a quick dry with my heat gun. I'm just going to put that on the front of my crate, and I'll be able to use that for other seasons as well with other different kinds of food. So I am going to go in and use my heat gun, or my hot glue gun, and just do a bead of glue on that long line. That's a great place to glue these things on, and you don't get a lot of the hot glue dripping out the sides. Now I needed some kind of filler, so I'm going to use one of these hay bales from the Dollar Tree, and open these over a trash can. They are super messy. Now they has 2 wires on there, which was a little tougher than I thought. I couldn't really cut through them, so I'm kind of pulling them off the side. And if you're going to do this, prepare to make a mess. Good Lord. And so I'm just trying to use that hay as filler. The hay makes a really cute filler for apples. It really reminds me of fall. I didn't put enough in there, so I'm going to add more. I ended up using probably 2/3 of that thing, and then I just threw away the rest because it was too messy. Okay, there we go. This is when you need one of these little ladybug vacuums. I'll post a link below. For real. They're awesome. Okay. Now, this next item is a thrift. I guess not really flip. I didn't have to do anything to it. I got this at the Goodwill store for 99 cents. And it is a little barrel of apples. And it's a kitchen timer. And it even works, which is perfect for my kitchen tier tray. I love it. And it's in perfect condition. 99 cents. Okay, this next item is out of this tier tray starter kit from the Target Dollar Spot. They're $5 and you get these 5 awesome pieces. They have this in a blue one as well, I believe I picked up. But I want this one, the apple sign. It's perfect. I don't have to do anything to it. Okay, next up is another thrift find. I told you I had to use the thrift store a lot on this one. And this is a beautiful apple I got for 99 cents. I'm not really sure what it's made out of, but it's really kind of cool. So I am just taking the sticker off and cleaning it up, and that is all I have to do with that. Okay, I thought apples and I thought apple pie. It is my son's favorite kind of pie, so I decided to try to make an apple pie. So I went and bought him one of those little like 99-cent apple pies, and then I asked him for the tin. So I'm just going to use that tin and some felt and try my best to make an apple pie. So I got one of these like just variety packs of felt from Walmart. I think it was $2 with all different colors. And I'm using this kind of ivory color as the apples in the pie. And I'm just using a little bit of hot glue to glue down that circle I cut out. Doesn't have to be perfect because it's not going to be visible, the edges. And then this like buttery brown color, I'm cutting out some strips. And I thought I could do like a lattice top to my pie. So I am just kind of cutting those out a little too big for the pie. And I'm going to do 3 across. And then I am going to do 2 the other way. And then I will weave those together. I had so much fun putting this little apple pie together. And that is also, it's going to, excuse me. Also, it's going to need a little, I think, circle to go around the border to finish up the edges of my crust. So I just use the actual pie pan and a marker, and I just draw that on the felt so I can get me a perfect circle. And I am just cutting that out with my fabric scissors. And I only want it to be like the edges. I want the apple to show through. So then I'm going to carefully cut inside another circle, and so it's going to give me a little ring for the outer edge of our apple pie. Okay, time to put this thing together. Just going to use hot glue to glue down the edges. I guess I could have done that on top. It doesn't really matter though. And here are our little lattice pieces. I'm going to start by gluing the ones that are going up and down first. Just overhanging it. I can always trim that up later. And so I have the 3 pieces going that way. I'm only going to attach it on that side because I want to be able to weave these through. So I'm going to do this one over, under, over. And then I can go ahead and glue that one down. And then this one I'm going to alternate the other way, under, over, and under, and hot glue both the sides of that. Now you'll notice that they're all overlapped a little bit, and I can just go back now with scissors and trim that after I get the bottom all glued down. All right, so I'm just going to go around and trim off all the excess felt here. And we have a little apple pie. I thought this project was really fun, and I had a lot of fun putting it together. Now, once I get the little apple pie all done, you notice I do have some red felt there. I was going to try to cut out like a little apple to put on top, but I couldn't really figure that out. So I'm just going to take a little fluff from an old pillow and one of the edges that wasn't glued down, and I decided to puff it up a little bit to make it look like a nice pie right out of the oven. Now, I needed a little sign to advertise my apple pie, so I'm using one of these little chalkboards from the Dollar General that I got for $1, but I kind of wanted it to look like wood. So I'm going over the white frame and the white legs with some antique wax by Waverly, and just making it have like a nice wood grain finish. And you can get these at Dollar Tree as well, I think in a raw wood, or they have one without a frame as well, I think, too. But this one was a perfect size, and so I'm going to go ahead and use this one today. So once I get the antique wax on there, I'm just going back with a paper towel and wiping off the excess. It was a little glossy, making sure I didn't wipe off too much because I don't want to take it all off. And just removing the Dollar General sticker there on the back. Just making sure I get I didn't tape off the back or anything. It doesn't have to look perfect, but I kind of wanted it to look like wood. And then I thought I could use this chalkboard like a little advertisement board like at a restaurant. And so I'm going to use a white paint pen to represent my chalk on there. And I'm just going to freehand today's pie and then put apple like a restaurant would have like a pie of the day. is what I was thinking with that. And then you'll see I got those little apple pie wood clothespins, mini clothespins at the Dollar Tree. One of the few apple items they did have. I don't really want the clothespin on the back, so I'm going to use a pair of pliers. I can get most of it off. I don't want to split the wood or anything, so I do leave the final piece on there. And I want that to look like a rustic apple pie. So I'm going over it first with just some antique wax by Waverly. And then over the top of that, I am going to paint with my red paint pen, the apple. And then I'm going to also try to paint in the crust and the metal pie pan. So I'm using kind of this ivory color or tan for the top. And I kind of outlined it first. I couldn't really decide how much I wanted to color it in. And then I used the silver paint pen for the bottom. I do end up going back here and coloring it all in. Once you use the antique wax first, I find that the paint kind of sinks into it. So it kind of gives it this really like aged, rustic look, which is exactly what I was going for. I wanted it to look like a really old chalkboard. And so I do go in and end up coloring in the silver pan as well. And again, even if you would have just left the stain with the antique wax by Waverly, it would still be really pretty and rustic. I'm just being a little extra on it. Once I get it all painted, I'm sanding it down a little bit more just to give it a little bit more of a rustic feel. And then I'm going to go over it again with some more antique wax by Waverly. And that is perfect. So I'm just going to attach it with a little bit of hot glue to our little chalkboard, and project complete. Okay, this project was so easy. I got one of these 2-packs of coffee cup, portable coffee cups, plastic coffee cups at the Dollar Tree. I'm trying to take the paint off of it with some fingernail polish remover, but it won't come off, but that's okay. I'll just turn it around. So I'm only going to need one of these plastic cups, and I used my Cricut to cut some Dollar Tree red vinyl in the skinny font that looks like Ray Dunn, and I'm just going to have it say hot cider. So easy peasy. This vinyl from the Dollar Tree is fabulous, and I'm going to use some of this paper, transfer paper that I get on Amazon, and this project was the easiest. I'm just going to pop it on the back of our little plastic coffee cup. And this is going to be a nice tall piece for the back of my tier tray. That goes with the theme of the apple and the apple cider. And that's all there is to that. Okay, here is another thrift find I found. A wooden apple. It's a really nice size. I want to brighten it up a little bit though. So I'm going to go over with some of this crimson chalk paint by Waverly, and I'm just going to kind of go all over with a really sloppy coat because I'm going to do something else with it. I did find this at the thrift store for 99 cents. So a really good deal and a really good find. Like I was saying, lots of apple stuff at your thrift store, so that is a good place to check because the Dollar Tree does not have very much. So once I get it all on there, I'm just going to use my paper towel just to pat, pat, pat. And it's going to give me like this really cool stipple effect, which is kind of like a sponge print. I wanted it to look cool, like you could see the dark red through it. And so that's kind of the look I was going for. So if there's an area that had too much paint come off, I'm just kind of going back over and just sponging on some more of that bright red paint. And then just stippling it with the paper towel. And it gave me a really cool aged effect on this little wood apple. And that is all I think I need to do for that little thrift flip. And just giving it a good dry all over with my heat gun. And that project is complete. I thought it maybe needed something on the stem, but it wasn't really long enough. Okay, so I got one of these little wood trucks from the Crafter Square at the Dollar Tree, and some of these apple cutouts from the Dollar Tree in their fall section. Now, I thought I would do just a really big abstract apple sticking out of the back of my little truck, but I kind of wanted to look chunky. So I'm just going to go ahead and glue 3 of these apples together, back to back to back like that, and use my hot glue also to fill up the little hole in the little apple ornaments. And these trucks are great. Some people I know box them in. I'm just going to leave it open like this. I think it's going to be fine for today's project. So once I get that hot glue dry on there, I'm trying to sand off the excess. I did get a little bit extra on the back, so I'm trying to scrape that off and sand that as well and get that ready to paint. I'm just going to do the wood apple in this crimson chalk paint by Waverly and go over all of it and give it a nice coat of that bright red. I'm also going to go around the edges just because I did have a little bit dripping on there, and that's going to give it kind of more of a finished look. And I just use my heat gun to speed up the drying on that side so I can flip it over and do the other side. I want the back to be bright red as well because it's going to be on a tier tray, so you might be able to see all the sides. And I did have a little bit of that hot glue still on there, which made the paint not stick, so I did have to touch that up a little bit. But I'm just going to make that the back. No big deal. There's always one side that looks better, right? And you can always put that side to the front. So I'm making sure I have a nice even coat on my little apple. And then I am ready to start working on my little truck. I thought it would be pretty to make my little truck green. So I'm using some chalk paint by Waverly. I think the color of this is called Malachite. And I am just going all over. This raw wood is so easy to paint with chalk paint. The only challenging part on this is going in and trying to do the insides as well, because you're working around that little beam that's holding the 2 pieces together. But it's not too bad. You can kind of get in there, especially with a sponge brush, and kind of get in it those little nooks and crannies. And I thought that this is a little bit of a brighter color than I would normally do, but I think it looks really nice with a contrast with the red apples for my little fall themed tier tray today. Now, I'm not going to need a lot of projects because this is my 2-tier tray. I have this on my kitchen counter and it is made out of wood. So I'm trying to keep like a color scheme of red, green, and wood for most of my projects today. Once I get that all painted in that pretty color of malachite, I am going to go in and use that same color just to do the little stem and leaf on my little block apple. And I am having to go over that bright red, which is a little bit hard to paint. So I do have to go in and give it several coats to try to brighten that up a little bit because the red was kind of showing through. And that's all I'm going to do. I really wanted this piece to be really abstract. It's not really, those little trucks aren't really big enough to have a lot in the bed. Like, you know, I could have used those little wood apples or something. But I think this turned out really good. I think this was a good application for this little truck. And once I have it all painted, I am touching up my apple a little bit. When I painted the stem, I got a little bit of green paint on there. And then I thought I wanted to cover up the little hole. You can still kind of see the little hole in the ornament. So I'm just going to use a little piece of twine and make a really tiny little bow. And I am just going to glue that over that little circle so that you can't see it. And it gives a little decorative touch. Now, I had to be really careful burning off the loose fibers on there because it was such a tiny bow and I did not want to burn myself. I actually already did burn myself on this project, but oh, my hot glue gun. And then I wanted one more little final touch, so I'm just going to use a little tiny little button. And that apple is ready to put in the bed of our little green truck. Oh, maybe it's not. Maybe I need more green paint. There we go. And I just want to attach it to that little wooden beam. At first, I just try to hot glue it on there and kind of sit it up at a diagonal. And, but it felt really unsteady. I didn't think that was going to work. So I pull it off and I use one of those little wood cubes from the Dollar Tree. But first I'm going to go ahead and paint it in that malachite green so that you won't be able to see it. And then I'm just going to glue that to the back part of that little beam. And that's going to give me something to hot glue the apple against to make it more sturdy. So I'm going to hot glue on the bottom and on the block. And that definitely did the trick to hold something in the back of our little truck. And that's all there is to it. Our little project is complete. Super abstract, but I think it turned out really cute. Okay, so here is another item that I was able to acquire at the Dollar Tree. It is one of these little apple boxes. They had these with their fall stuff at the Dollar Tree. Now I'm going to go over just one side with that crimson chalk paint by Waverly and do a red. Now I'm going to go ahead and dry that a little bit, and then I'm going to start on the rest of it. I'm going to use Antique Wax by Waverly, and I finally needed a new bottle of that stuff. It lasts forever. And I'm going to go over all the surfaces of our little box with that Antique Wax by Waverly, following it up with a paper towel to wipe off the excess. And I'm just going to go ahead and do the bottom. Just make this a finished piece. So if you picked it up and looked at it, it's going to be finished on all the different edges. I never really know what to do with these little boxes from the Dollar Tree. I'm like, it's a very small planter. What are you supposed to do with these things? Does anybody have any great ideas? If you do, please comment below. But I'm going to go ahead and do the inside everything with the Antique Wax by Waverly and just give it a finished look in case I want to use it again in the future for something else. Then I'm also going to take that Antique Wax by Waverly and go over my red because I want it to look like really weathered, really distressed. Follow that up with a paper towel going straight up and down. It gave me a nice vibe. I'm going to use some of this soft floral foam from the Dollar Tree and just cut it to size. Just going to slide it in there. I'm not going to hot glue it down because I might want to use this little apple box for something else. Now I found these little red flowers at the Dollar Tree, and I am just going to fill in that box with these. I'm not really going to cover up the foam because I'm just going to go in there and use the leaves that are left over on these little red flowers, just as a little bit of filler in there. And it gives us a cute little flower arrangement for our tier tray. And I always like to bring in just a few flowers on a tier tray if I can, especially in the kitchen. So I'm just taking off those leaves. They don't really have a stem on them. I'm just kind of putting them in there just as filler. That way it's going to make the piece fuller and you're not going to be able to see that little foam in there behind the flowers. And just arranging them till I get them exactly how I like them. And we have our little apple planter. I decided to take a little piece of twine and just do a simple little bow on the stem. There wasn't much of a stem on there, but that's just a final little touch. And we have another project complete. Okay, I got this great bucket at the thrift store. It reminded me of an apple bucket. It's a nice big, it's too big for my tier tray, but I thought I could sit it next to my tier tray. And you can always do that with tier trays. You can always like kind of build off on the counter. And I couldn't really find any red apples, but these apples will do. And I'm just going to use real apples. It's going to be functional. It's going to be apples on our counter for fall. And it's in this great bucket. The bucket, I got it at Goodwill for $2.99, and it's in perfect condition, and I love it. I can use it for so many things. Okay, I'm going to need some risers for my tier tray for the items that are in the back that are a little bit shorter. So I'm just going to use some Antique Wax by Waverly to stain one of these giant Jenga blocks from Five Below and some of these little wood block circles from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to go over the surfaces that could be visible, the top and the sides, and then follow that up with a paper towel after my antique wax and just give that quick stain. And we have a couple risers that are going to blend in well with my wood tier tray. Then I have a little hook behind my tier tray. I have a bar that has all my Rae Dunn collection, and I thought I needed a little sign back there. I wanted something super simple. So I'm using this apple sign from the Dollar Tree and one of these cookie sheets from the Dollar Tree. These things come 2 to a package, and they're this real thin, bumpy kind of metal. And so I'm trying to cut that out. I use a pen to just kind of make an indentation in the foil pan of what size the apple is. And then I'm just going in with regular scissors and cutting it super, super thin, super easy to work with. And I have never worked with this before, but I thought this would be an interesting texture. It was almost big enough to do like the textured part on the whole sign, but on the bottom and the top, there was some areas where it is a little bit smoother, but I think that's going to be fine. I'm just going to go ahead. I didn't get it trimmed perfect, so I'm going to go ahead and put it on the back, just so you won't be able to see that black sign peeking out around the edges. You'll be able to see the brown. I just, again, want this to be a really simple sign, but I want it to be like the shape of an apple. Now, I'm using hot glue to attach that to the sign. And I'm not sure if this thin foil can really hold up to the hot foil, because I do end up with a damaged area, but only in one part. I'm going to watch it here and try to figure out what happened to that part. I'm just going around and trimming up the edges. There was kind of a border around the edges, which was fine. I was just trying to make that more even. And I am hot gluing down any of the little loose edges with that hot glue. And then I'm going to dress this up a little bit. Trying to get like the edges like smooth. I did get a little hot glue on the surface of it there, which was a little hard to remove, but I'm just using a wet wipe. Now you can kind of see the damaged area showing through right there. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if the hot glue like melted the metal, but it's an area I'll have to disguise. So I'm thinking about just using one of those little fall wood cutouts from the Dollar Tree fall section to make a little sign to cover up our damaged area. And I wanted to put something on there anyway. So now I'm just going to tie off our stem, and I'm just going to use some jute twine to wrap around that. I'm not being like super fancy. I'm just going up and down and gluing that off on the back. And you could kind of see some of the brown showing through, but no big deal. While I'm back there, I'm also going to make just a simple jute twine hanger. I need it to be fairly short to hang this. There's not a lot of room behind my tier tray, but I think that will work. And then I use some Antique Wax by Waverly to do a quick stain on my little welcome fall sign. Then I'm going to go around and stain all of the exposed edges of the wood, kind of going onto the metal tray as well to kind of give it like a little bit of a rusty vibe, like if the metal was a little bit rusted. So I go around the edges a couple of times with that Antique Wax by Waverly until I get a nice little distress around the edge. Then I'm going to use hot glue to attach that welcome fall sign just on that damaged area of the sign. I was able just to turn around that green leaf so I don't have to do anything to it. And I kind of like the rusted vibe of the metal. So I'm just using a chunky brush from the Dollar Tree, some of that Antique Wax by Waverly, and just kind of going all over and making some real light rust spots with that. Okay, it's time. So I zip tied the little apple cider press to the top of my tier tray on that metal ring. And then that is my apple planter. We have our hot cider cup for the top of our tier tray. We have our today's pie, which is apple. And then in front of that, I'm going to put our little apple from the thrift store and our apple pie that we created today. And I think that is good and full for the top tier. I have this little apple sign from the Target dollar spot, our little crate of farm fresh apples. And I'm going to raise up that little Target sign in the back so that you can read it over the top of our little apples that you picked. I have our wood apple in the back. It needs a little bit of a lift, so I'm going to use 2 of those rings for a riser. We have our little kitchen timer apples. I love that thing. It's so cute. And then in the front, I thought we could put our little green truck with our big apple in the back. Now I need a little bit of filler, so I'm going to use some of these little brown vine balls from the crafting section at the Dollar Tree. And they come 3 to a package. I'm just going to kind of toss them in there in any little areas that are empty. And then I thought it needed a little bit more filler. So whenever I use these Dollar Tree plants, I try to save the leaves if I don't use them. And they're great to pull off and use for filler in projects like this. And the green leaves are representing like the little green leaves on the top of the apple's stem there. And here is our great bucket full of apples. I love that wooden bucket. What a great find. And then to finish it all off, I'm going to hang that little metal welcome fall sign we made. It goes great with like the metal on the front of our little apple bucket. And it doesn't take away from the really cute stuff going on over here on our little apple tier tray for fall. So again, we have our hot cider. We have our cider press thrift flip. We have our little apple that I found at the thrift store. And we have our apple pie that we made out of a little pie tin and some felt. And our little chalkboard that I got from the Dollar General. And our little apple flower arrangement, all from the Dollar Tree. And that looks great peeking out on the top of our little apple tier tray. Then moving down to the bottom, we have our little Target sign. Pick your own apples. Didn't have to do anything to that. And then our little farm fresh crate full of apples from the Dollar Tree. I don't really like that leaf in front because I want you to be able to read that farm fresh. And then we have our little green truck and apple made with items from the Dollar Tree. We have our apple back there in the back that I found at the thrift store. And also at the thrift store, I was able to get this apple barrel kitchen timer. And that looks really fun sitting next to my actual barrel of apples. And this is what it all looks like together on my kitchen counter with the little barrel of apples sitting right next to it. A bag of real apples is so much cheaper than fake apples, by the way. And it's in my kitchen, so it's a great place to keep my apples on the counter. And then our little metal sign that we made for the wall. And it's just going to tie it all together there in the corner of my kitchen counter. Don't be afraid to put a tier tray in your kitchen. You can make it functional like this. And really cute. And I love how this project turned out. What do you guys think about my apple tier tray for fall? What was your favorite project or thrift find? I think mine might be that apple cider press. Maybe that barrel for my oranges. I don't know. I loved them. Oh, guys, I really hope you enjoyed my video today. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button. Comment your favorite project below, and don't forget to subscribe. Until next time, happy crafting for fall. Bye.